Welcome to Story Addict, your fix of the best new books, TV and film, with your host Rebecca Bowyer, voracious reader, compulsive writer and tired parent.
Welcome to the Story Addict podcast. I'm Rebecca Bowyer, your host, and today we've got an upcoming release. Our fierce feminist and fabulous writer Clementine Ford is releasing a new book next month, which I'm itching to get my hands on. It's called Boys Will Be Boys, and Clem says this about it. Everyone's afraid that their daughters might be hurt. No one seems to be scared that their sons might be the ones to do it. This book is the culmination of many years of writing about power, abuse, privilege, male entitlement, and rape culture. After all that, here's what I've learned. We should be effing terrified. That's from the introduction. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for that one, I thought it would be really great to revisit her first book, which was Fight Like a Girl. That was released a couple of years ago. And the reason I want to talk about it is that I feel like some people out there might be a little nervous about reading Clem Ford's book. I myself put off reading Fight Like a Girl for nearly a year because I was afraid of my own anger. I didn't want to feel any more angry at the world than I already was. But what I wanted to say to you, if you're feeling the same way, is you needn't have worried. Her ironic, humorous treatment of topics that leave plenty of the rest of us unable to see through blinding rage was really incredibly refreshing and uplifting. It might surprise you to learn that Clem Ford didn't identify as being a feminist when she was younger. In Fight Like a Girl, she goes over her own childhood and how she came to identify as a feminist in the form that we see her today. It follows her journey from a schoolgirl desperate for male attention and approval to a high-profile feminist writer who laughs at her online attackers. It's a fascinating and bumpy road. So if you'd like to continue along in your belief the world is really pretty much overall okay for women, as long as we keep our heads down, don't provoke men, and remember above all that hashtag not all men, then you definitely shouldn't read this book. If, however, you've been harbouring a simmering irritation, maybe you're not even quite sure why, or outright outrage at the state of gender equality today, then this is the book for you, Fight Like a Girl. I found it extremely helpful to identify exactly what still needs to change, and even more importantly, how to change it. So I wanted to share with you a few of my favourite quotes. She talks about women and body identity. So this is a quote on why women of all shapes and sizes are called fat. The simple explanation, as always, is that the person calling you fat is an effing twit who lacks the intellectual capacity to argue against your political ideas and so tries to deride you by telling you that you're too fat to F. Boo-hoo. I've taken to agreeing with men who call me fat. Yes, I am the fattest person in the world, I say, and I am going to sit on you until you suffocate and then I will eat you. It works a charm. Now, just a note, she doesn't actually write F. I'm just trying to keep the content rating clean for the purpose of Apple Podcasts so I don't get banned for explicit content. A little more cheerily, she talks about having really strong circles of female friends. Listen to me when I tell you this, because it might be the most important thing in this whole book. The best thing you can do for your self-esteem, your sanity, your sense of accomplishment, your happiness, and your inner strength is to find yourself a solid girl gang. Instead of feeling judged by my girlfriends, I find relief in their company. They make me feel safe and supported because they don't respond to my shared experiences of being a woman with a suggestion that I might be exaggerating or imagining things. I also found her journey to being quite high profile and writing about feminism on the internet as really helpful. I haven't, in my 5 years on the internet talking publicly, experienced a lot of backlash, partly because of the topics that I write about. They're a little more mundane. But I certainly have dealt with my share of internet trolls when I'm talking about anything to do with equality. For example, when I'm supporting Share the Dignity, which is a fabulous charity. I'll put some more about Share the Dignity in the show notes. But Clem Ford has this advice about online trolls. Online trolls are the boggarts of the internet, and laughter kills them. So laugh. Laugh and watch them wilt. They'll fight back, of course, but the more they shrink before us, the more strength you'll have to go on fighting. That's what all of us need to do. We need to fight back and take the space that belongs to us, no matter how angry it makes these men feel, and no matter how viciously they try to tear us down. So, a couple of the quotes I've read you are quite angry, but overall the book I found didn't make me feel angry. It actually made me feel quite hopeful. It was interesting, it was funny, and it was so insightful, which is what I love about all of Clem Ford's writing. So do yourself a favour and grab a copy and a coffee if you like, while you're waiting for Clem Ford's new book to come out. So that book I've just been talking about is Fight Like a Girl, and her new book is Boys Will Be Boys, and that will be out in October. And now for a new release book review. We've got Sold on a Monday by Christina McMorris. It was published in August 2018. It's historical fiction set in the 1930s in the US, and it's actually based on a true story, which is often the best historical fiction. I like that. Two children for sale. In 1931, near Philadelphia, ambitious reporter Alice Reed photographs the gut-wrenching sign posted beside a pair of siblings on a farmhouse porch. With the help of newspaper secretary Lily Palmer, Alice writes an article to accompany the photo. So these days capturing the human interest story is a bit, well, of course, moment. But back in those days, it was very factual reporting. So the idea of Alice actually capturing a photo like this that pulls at the heartstrings and gets to the very heart of the Depression in the 1930s would have been a really big deal. And the author's note at the end of the book by Christina actually outlines the history behind this and why she decided to write it. So she says, one of the daughters reportedly recalled her mother selling her for bingo money and tacking on her younger brother for free, at least partly because the man her mother was dating had no interest in the children. The total price was $2 measly. Assigned new names, the siblings were then used as forced labour on the acquiring couple's farm, where they were often hideously mistreated. Although several decades have passed since then, I couldn't help but wish I could go back and alter those appalling events. So, while my characters are entirely fictional, it would be safe to say that the book in your hands was my attempt to give the children in the photo the loving and compassionate outcome that, in my heart, I felt they deserved. So in the fictional story, Alice takes the photo, but it's accidentally destroyed before being published. He goes back to take another one, but the family's gone. He's so desperate to hold on to his job and to push his own career out of the society pages, which is where he's been reporting, and into real reporting, that he ends up paying the family in the house opposite to stage another photo for him. So if we fast forward a while, his career is shining. It does take off because of the photo, but it doesn't make him happy. Success is funny like that. Guilt gnaws away at him. There's a bit of a love thing going on between him and Lily Palmer. So with her help, he sets out to find what happened to those kids in the photo. He feels like it will make him happier to know. It will set his conscience at ease. Needless to say, they discover things are not hunky-dory. Lily has her own motivations as to why she wants to go along with it. As a mother, she has her own love child, so a child that she has in secret in the countryside while she works in the city 5 days a week. And to be honest, this is where the story fell over a little bit for me. So the story itself requires that Lily gallivants around the countryside out of work hours. That's what you need to do when you're investigating what happened to these two kids. But the problem is she also makes a big deal out of missing her son during the week, so you would think that she would want to spend as much time with him as possible. This is addressed in the narrative, but she leaves her young son with her very understanding parents for large chunks of time on the weekends as well. Personally, I would have loved to have seen her try to take the kid with her while she was gallivanting. That would have led to a whole new level of drama. But she didn't, and that's fine. It is explained. The feel of the book is fairly sanitised and polite. It's that genre of historical fiction that's safe to take on a holiday and not end up in tears or feeling like you should hide it from prying eyes. Not prying, what am I talking about? But it's a really enjoyable read, and it gives you an idea of what was happening around the time in the 1930s and a bit more of, albeit fictional, background to this particular photo. So I do recommend it if you're looking for a relaxing, interesting historical fiction read from that time. Now it's time for my favourite segment, Speculating on Speculative Fiction, where I get to talk about my favourite genre of all time, speculative fiction. Each week in Season 1 of Story Addict, I'm going to tell you about one of my favourite spec-fic books. Speculative what, I hear you say? I should probably explain what I'm talking about first. Speculative fiction is an umbrella genre, encompassing narrative fiction with supernatural or futuristic elements, according to Wikipedia. It includes, but is not limited to, science fiction, fantasy, superhero fiction, science, fantasy, horror, utopian and dystopian fiction, supernatural fiction, as well as combinations thereof. And there's a rumour floating around that spec fic was actually invented for Margaret Atwood, who refused to allow The Handmaid's Tale to be categorised as science fiction. Some stories I feel tend to fall into the sci-fi category, I guess because you could argue that politics and society falls into the social sciences. But that's something we can debate another time. So my first pick for you today is Charlaine Harris's Sookie Stackhouse series. A friend of mine got me onto these when my kids were young. And they are brilliant. They're so funny. They're possibly better known now for the HBO series True Blood. But the books are so much fun. And just a note on that, True Blood, the TV series, the HBO series, I really didn't like. For me, and this is as someone who also loves Game of Thrones, it was just a bit too much gratuitous violence, and I don't feel like it actually captured the sense of the books terribly well. So if you saw a bit of True Blood and you didn't like it, please try the books anyway. If you loved Buffy, you'd probably love the books. It's sort of like Buffy grows up and has lots and lots of sex. But anyway, they're set in the alternate deep south of America, where vampires have outed themselves and are demanding equal civil rights. So some are happy to drink synthetic blood now and stop killing humans, so they figure they should be allowed to come out to see the light of day. Sookie Stackhouse, who's the central character of every book, is a barmaid at Merlot's Bar and Grill in small-town Louisiana. She works for minimum wage and has a fairly quiet life. She's also a telepath. Not that she wants that widely advertised. People tend to think you're a bit weird in small-town Louisiana if you can hear other people's thoughts. Then she meets Bill the vampire. She can't read his mind, and so she develops a relationship with him. And vampires are amazing in bed. That's a theme of this series, didn't you know? And she enters a world of supernatural creatures. So each novel is set up as an individual detective-style story, and Sookie Stackhouse gets to be the unwilling detective. But the most hilarious part of it is that in amongst the high drama of vampires getting drained by humans who want to sell their blood on the black market, it gives you a nice high, and vampires who want to kill people and drink their blood because that's what they've always done, is Sookie. Sookie just wants to be able to pay the bills and keep her house clean. She wants everyone to be polite and gets a little irritated with them when they won't mind their manners, as you should in the Deep South. So, I highly recommend this one. Grab yourself a copy and get reading. Dead Until Dark is the first in the series. There are around 9 or 10 from memory. And the beautiful thing is, because they're a bit older, they started back in the 90s, you can pick up some pretty cheap copies. I've just seen one on Booktopia for $3.90, and that's paperback, not ebook. And that's all for today. Thanks for listening. Get in touch and tell me, what have you been reading that you think I'd love? I'm on Twitter at Rebecca Boyer AU. And Instagram and Facebook at Rebecca Boyer Writer. Take care and happy storying.
Thanks for tuning in to Story Addict. Remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Connect with like-minded story addicts at storyaddict.com.au.